with Mr. McKay that we need to look at solutions to ensure that what happened doesn't happen again. There does have to be some level of accountability. And to that end, the government has essentially washed its hands clean insofar as they have tried to place the blame squarely on House of Commons administration. And then when we begin to probe House of Commons administration, it seems to have fallen all on House of Commons IT, and yet 35 Government of Canada clients, including likely the Prime Minister's Department, the PCO, were briefed in November of 2021. That's more than a year and a half before you were finally briefed, thanks to the FBI. So again, the notion that it should be left to IT services that was dealing with a technical matter of ensuring the integrity of IT systems in the House of Commons be left to them to inform members of Parliament seems to be completely untenable. Wouldn't you agree? And shouldn't there be some level of responsibility if, in fact, the PCO, the National Security and Intelligence Advisor, were informed in November of 2021 and said nothing and did nothing for a year and a half and would not have done anything but for the FBI?
Mr. Cooper, unfortunately, that's all the time. So certainly in the next round, you're welcome to
get a simple answer.
Unfortunately, your preamble.
Well, I think it's very interesting that you're cutting me off on that important point.
I'm not cutting you off, sir. I'm simply applying the rules fairly. You will have another opportunity to ask questions to our colleagues. Mr. Romanato,
Mr. Chair, to the members, do you accept the government's contention that this all fell on House of Commons administration and, as it turns out, House of Commons IT services to brief members of Parliament about this cyber attack of this nature?
I'll start, Chair. No, I don't, and I made, I think, 5 distinct points in my opening comments about why I don't. It was in my case a personal account. There are gaps in terms of what we know about what the House was even told. The government misunderstands the nature and expectations of IT professionals. The potential for caveats and the fact that members of Parliament are not creatures of the House. We have rights on our own. And Mr. Cooper, just to follow up on your previous comments, we can talk about systemic failure, systems not doing the things we would expect of them, and then we can talk about individual accountability, people not making the choice to ensure the information got there. I think it's important to talk about systems, but also we can't miss the accountability piece that you've pointed out, which is that people had this information and made a choice not to take the steps necessary to get that information to those who were being targeted. I don't think we should use a discussion of systems to abstract from the fact that individuals in those systems made choices, and those choices led to members of Parliament being more vulnerable to foreign threats.
I'm not quite so enthusiastic about blaming the government for everything. I think this is more of a failure of protocols. CSE, apparently as the FBI released the information to various governments, some governments had exactly the same protocol as Canada had, and other governments were much more detailed. I tend to think at this stage, 2 years on, that we should have those protocols needed to be changed. But, I don't want to take all the time so that you can get James in there.
I don't buy that argument that it's not just protocol. It's a culture, and it starts at the top, starts in the Prime Minister's office, and that this information has to be shared. The way they classify that information, the way they direct traffic, whether it's through CSE, CSIS, RCMP, Parliamentary Protective Services, the Speaker, how they share that information, that all starts with the yes or no that comes from the top in the PMO.
And I guess I'd push back a little bit on Mr. McKay insofar as the ministerial directive was issued in May of 2023 following the last question of privilege dealing with Mr. Chong, following that ministerial directive, there was again a briefing to so-called relevant Government of Canada clients about the ATP 31 cyber attack. But again, no members of Parliament were briefed. So does that lend you any confidence in the ministerial directive and this government's approach to making members of Parliament informed?
Well, let me push back on the pushback, and say that the ministerial directives are helpful but late. And are they properly executed? I don't know. I would have hoped that once that ministerial directive was issued in 2023, that they might have reviewed their previous decisions, particularly with respect to us, and advised us, even if it was advised late. So hopefully, this committee will actually indicate that there is a need to not only change the culture here, but also the system here and the timeliness of the implementation of the change.
Sounds like Mr. McKay was agreeing instead of pushing back there.
I would like to think that we can spend a little bit more time actually dealing with solutions and analysis of the problems instead of just wasting our time blaming whoever should have been blamed. I'm perfectly prepared to accept that this was an error. And it should have, we should have been named. But
there's actually a pattern here, and it comes back to the national
Mr.
security.
Bazan, I am going to let you respond, but I'm going to give you a little bit of leeway if you wanted to reply.
Yeah, I'd just say that there is blame to go around here, and I think not only at the PMO but in the PCO with the National Security and Intelligence Advisor, what we saw under NSCOP, not sharing information, what we've seen in reporting, what we saw in Mr. Chong's case, and that testimony at the Hogue inquiry, all point to the fact that the NSIA has not been sharing this information, or saying it's not important. That especially when it comes to parliamentarians, the position has been in the culture is they don't need to know. Guess what? We need to know.